All right. Okay, so we're hitting the top of the hour. So we're gonna jump right in. Before we launch into the webinar, and I have a PowerPoint to kind of guide us through this conversation today. I'm just gonna give a little bit of background, a little bit of housekeeping, if you will. Do know that we have a few of us here panelists today. We cannot see your faces, first and foremost. So usually when we're giving these webinars or talking with individuals, we love to see facial expressions, give us some nonverbal cues on is our conversation landing. So feel free to engage within that chat space if you have commentary or you something hits home and you want us to explore that further, or if you have questions, feel feel free, throw them in the chat throughout our conversation today. There likely will be time at the end for some question and answer with myself and the rest of the crew here. So we might not get to them during the webinar presentation, but certainly at the end, if we have time, we'll go through some of those questions. So pop those in the chat as you think of them throughout the webinar. The other thing to note is today is kickstarting a 4-part series that we're doing here at kind of entitled Launch Your Career with Mayo Clinic. Today is all about finding your passion in nursing. It's something that is really exciting for me, something that I really enjoy talking about. And I think many of us here, for sure, Cheryl can also attest that it's something that we've all had to do for ourselves. So we'll talk a little bit about finding your passion in nursing, what that means, how do we get there. The subsequent series will be every Tuesday, same time for the next 3 weeks. You do not need to participate in all of them. If you want to be a part of them, great. Hear from different speakers. It will not just be myself talking. Today is a lot of Heidi talking, but the subsequent series of the webinars will not just be me talking. We'll pull in other different leaders from Mayo Clinic to give you insight. The following one will be about sharing your authentic self in the hiring process. How do you show up? How do you prepare? All those good things. And then we will also have a conversation about the nurse residency. So you get to hear about nurse residency here at Mayo Clinic. What does that look like at the different sites and regions, followed by a panel conversation with Mayo Clinic leaders from across our enterprise, sharing their story, answering all of our questions about how they got to where they are and where they found their passion along the way. So feel free to join all of them, or you can just join in whichever makes sense for you. All right, I am going to share my screen just so that we can all see the PowerPoint together. All right, can everyone see my screen yet?
Not quite yet, Heidi.
Okay, let me try one more thing. There we go. How about now?
Yeah. There it is.
Fantastic. All right. So to start off, I want to share a little bit about myself. So my name is Heidi Bjork. I'm a nursing placement coordinator here by title, but that's a very unique to Mayo Clinic role. So I don't really like to lead off with that because nobody knows what I'm talking about. You will hear a little bit about nursing placement throughout the webinar series, but for right now, I like to introduce myself as a registered nurse. I have been supporting Mayo Clinic Rochester for over a decade already in a variety of roles, of course, as we do as nurses. I've supported our patients, caring for them directly at the bedside. I've also been in leadership here as a nurse manager prior to moving into the role that I exist today as a placement coordinator. I've been here for the last 4.5 years, kind of indirectly supporting our patients by supporting our nurse managers across Rochester. For me specifically, behind the scenes, I am one of just a small team that review the applications. We get to read the resumes, the cover letters. We do all initial interviews with individuals looking to join our team. And we do all the career development for those continuing to work within our halls and walls. So really privileged to be here today and connect with all of you. I'll hand it over to Cheryl. She can introduce herself as well.
Hi there. My name is Cheryl Hurley, and I am a nursing placement coordinator. Heidi definitely described that role very nicely here in Phoenix, Arizona. That's the area that I support. And I have been with Mayo Clinic in Arizona since 2012. Prior to that, I am from Boston, the East Coast. And yes, I am sad that the Patriots lost the Super Bowl. And I worked at a large Boston hospital named Tufts Medical Center prior to coming to Mayo Clinic. I too, like Heidi, have been in many different roles during my nursing career. I have been a nurse for 35 years. I know what you're all thinking. I don't look it, but yes, 35 years for me in nursing. And I'm very grateful to be a part of this seminar today. So thank you all for joining.
Thanks, Cheryl. And Brittany, do you want to jump in and share a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, thank you. I am Brittany Croson. I am a talent acquisition recruiter, specifically supporting the nursing department from a Rochester, Minnesota location perspective. I've been with Mayo Clinic for 10 years. Of those years have been supporting the Department of Nursing in an HR space.
Thanks, Brittany. Thanks, Cheryl.
Yeah.
All right. To get started, I want to orient you a little bit about the Mayo Clinic sites and regions. Do know that even if you have no affiliation to Mayo Clinic at this point in time, you can still glean some insights from this conversation. By no means is it just applicable to those who are working or seeking employment at Mayo Clinic. So I want to preface with that, but it's also helpful to know a little bit about the people and the organization that we represent as we come from Mayo Clinic ourselves and have that background. So Mayo Clinic, as you may know, has presence in many sites and regions throughout our country. I directly support Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, but we also have a lot of health system sites in surrounding states in the southern regions of Minnesota into Wisconsin and even Iowa, as well as some primary sites within Arizona and Florida states. So Mayo Clinic values are really important to us, and values in itself, I think, is something that is really important for you to assess for yourself when it comes to, finding passion in what you do. It's really hard to find passion within an organization that doesn't meet or align with your core values. And so this slide is really orienting you to the Mayo Clinic core values, but more so wanting to make sure that you understand your own personal values and how that may align with any future employer that you might be seeking out in the future for yourself. It's probably coming to no surprise if you've looked at anything Mayo Clinic related that our core value is the needs of the patient come first. Now, that is not just an advertisement slogan. I have been here for over a decade, like I shared, and this is truly lived out in a lot of this decision making here at Mayo Clinic. I've seen it firsthand. Oftentimes, we're implementing new strategies, contemplating best practice, making some pretty significant changes that may have impacted patient care. And they're difficult conversations, but at the end of the day, the way in which, I would say the main influence on how we make those decisions is how does it impact the patients? What's going to happen if we make this process change? Are the patients going to benefit? Is it going to make their stay more challenging? Are they going to feel less comfortable? That is really lived out in how we make decisions and how we prioritize the care in which we do. There's also a lot of other values that we live by, and these need to not only be listed and available and accessible to you as you seek opportunities within your nursing profession, but you have to also understand, are they lived out and how are they lived out? How does this show up in everyday work? How are staff members held accountable and how are they evaluated by the values? So in respect to Mayo Clinic, our values, and you can read them for yourself there, I don't have to read them to you, but they follow an acronym we know very well as our Rich Ties value. And these are the direct values in which we evaluate our staff every single year. This is how we give them feedback. Are they showing up for our patients in the way in which we think is best practice? And that's really important to find an alignment with your personal core values and any organization or future employer, their values. So that's why we talk a little bit about values. Let's get into a little bit more depth about how you find your passion in nursing. Good news is it starts with getting to know yourself. Now, we live in this really challenging world where we are inundated with feedback, with information, with opinions. And sometimes that gets all mixed up in who we find true to ourselves, or how we figure out what it is that we value, and how we're meant to navigate kind of our own professional career. So I always say, before you look anywhere, the first thing I want you to do is get to know yourself a little bit more. Get off the screens, get off social media. Friends are great influences, family members, but take some time journaling about yourself, getting to know what sparks curiosity. What are the aspects of nursing that originally pulled you into the profession? What type of work environments are more stimulating to you versus not? What have your past clinical experiences been like? And what are the pieces that you've gravitated towards, and which ones have maybe steered you away, or haven't been as stimulating for you? Do you like to work with people, technology, or ideas? Or do you want to work with a really large team, or would you rather be more autonomous in your role? Do you really like moving to leadership roles and working autonomously and being able to really dictate your work? So this is something that I strongly encourage anyone looking to find their passion in their everyday work to do, is to really understand yourself. And that will make it much easier as you kind of navigate next steps in your career. Once you get to know yourself, then you can start looking within other avenues within healthcare. As you probably know, there are many spaces in which you can grow professionally. I think the most obvious one that people think about right away is acute care, working in the hospital. A lot of programs will really encourage nursing students, for example, to start in an acute care environment. Whereas I think it can be beneficial. I truly think that's very limiting in where you can start. Mayo Clinic in Rochester here specifically hires new graduate nurses into all areas that we have within our hospital, whether that be procedural areas, the ORs, ambulatory settings. Many individuals have spent time in community long-term skilled facilities, transitional care units, rehabilitation floors, and been very successful as they move through their career path. So one thing I will also want to share is that there's going to be opportunities, spaces, and places for nursing that don't even exist today that will likely be there in the future. And so I want to encourage you, when you're seeking out these different environments in which you could potentially work, to make sure you understand that although you can have an idea, a goal, and move towards that goal, that could change in the future. You need to be open as opportunities evolve and they unfold within the profession. For example, I was just talking with a new graduate individual who always wanted to start in a pediatric setting, right? Pediatrics, working with kiddos, very popular area where a lot of individuals want to move into that space one day. But we really had to have a pretty candid conversation, I would say, about what opportunities exist today and how do you really set yourself up for success if pediatric is a goal, but it's not available right away. How do you still achieve your goals? How do you find passion, and what opportunities are available today? And know that there's no experience that you obtain that is not going to be beneficial to your overall career goal as being a nurse. I remind people a lot that most of us went into the career of nursing to care for people, period, right? Many of us didn't start in nursing to care for only people with a cardiac defect or only people with a neurological condition, for example. You're going to find people in all these areas, people who need you, people who are vulnerable, people who need a light, a rock, someone to show up for them side by side, take care of them and the family who surround them and love them. So you're going to achieve those goals no matter which environment you start in. So keep that perspective as well. Don't be so narrow focused to limit opportunities as they present themselves. And then once you find your footing, so once you get started, once you find an organization where your values align with theirs, you get to know your people. Maybe you started in a work environment that initially you didn't think was going to be the place you started. Or maybe you moved into a new work environment after working in a specialty for years and you wanted to try something new to challenge yourself. And you find it's not as smooth of a transition as what you hoped, right? Or maybe you're not as passionate what you think initially about the patient population. I've been there. We'll talk about my journey here in a little bit, but passion isn't found through experience, or passion is found through experience, not just inspiration. You don't have to start in a place and be super passionate about a work environment, about a team, before you really get to know what that entails. And I think the way that you find passion is with some of these bullet points that I bring up here today is, again, rooting in your values, making sure that you understand that the way in which you show up and provide care is probably going to be the greatest indicator of your success, or should be. If not, right, you need to be proud of the way in which you provide care. Celebrate the successes. I can't emphasize this enough, that it's so important to take wins and really celebrate them. Let them sink in, share it with other people. Nursing is a really difficult profession, and you're going to have a lot of successes, but you're also going to have those really hard days. So celebrate the wins. Be curious in the things that maybe are uncomfortable. Why are they uncomfortable? Be curious about learning about different patient populations. Be curious about why maybe your coworkers respond in the way they do or provide care differently than you. Take care of yourself. We can only be as good a caregiver as we are caring for ourselves, right? We have to be able to show up and provide that compassion, healing presence for our patients. But if we're burnt out, if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not eating well, we're attending to our emotional needs, that's going to show up. And these are things that we can control ourselves. So take care of yourself. Seek out mentors, right? Find the people in your work environment that seem like they love every single day. There's going to be people that, whether it be, in a work environment or coworkers, or maybe it's someone you go to school with, that when they show up, when they walk in the door, people get excited, right? The energy shifts. They come in, they want to be there. Even if they're having a tough day, they're willing to share a joke or laugh or ask you how your day was. Those are the people I want you to find as mentors. They're going to help you find the passion. They're going to give you the inside scoop, right? They're going to be the ones who are cheering you on during those really tough times and helping you understand why sometimes we have to go through some difficult periods to really see the outcome on the other side. Mentors are wonderful tools, resources to have, because they've been through it, right? Lived experience. You can't skip experience. You just have to go through it. And these are the people who've gone through it. So learn from them, their successes, and hopefully they'll share some of their mistakes with you as well, right? So you can glean from their mishaps too. Get to know your team. A lot of us went into nursing to care for patients. I already said that. But what I think is a common misconception is that your team can make or break an experience. You see these patients for a short amount of time, and absolutely, I want you to be curious and engage and find enjoyment with the patients that you care for. The team in which you have to show up and be a part of every single day will make the ultimate difference in your experience. I guarantee that. And that's why we talked about those values. Finding a team that lives out those values, that is there, they're present, they're respectful, that they're demonstrating integrity in their work day in and day out. That's what's going to make your experience all the worthwhile. Invest in your team. Get to know them personally. That in turn will allow them permission to get to know you as well. That's how we build relationships, long-standing relationships. And they are the ones who are going to help you on some of those tough days when you're feeling burnt out. Maybe you're crying in the bedroom. They're going to say, hey, go take a break. Go get a cup of coffee. I'm going to take your next 5 call lights. That's what you need. And that's going to make the experience. And you're going to say, you know what? I'm going to keep doing this. I believe in what we do. And I know that the team supports me in this process. So help others, invest in your team, and don't try to skip through the experience. Don't try to rush into an end goal before you get started, because the experience is where you get to know yourself in more depth. The experience is how you gain better confidence in your clinical skills, and your experiences are what's going to lead to finding that passion in your everyday work. So Mayo Clinic was founded by a group of nuns, and one of the sisters that was really influential to our practice here at Mayo Clinic Rochester was Sister Lauren Winant. And she has a pretty profound quote that every time I read it, I get the goosebumps, those ones that give you chills and that really hit home. So I'll read this quote to you, but I want you to read it a second time to yourself and just think on it. Think what it means to you and how might it impact how you live out and provide patient care in the future. So Sister Lauren, in all of her wisdom, she shared this quote with us. My wish is to leave this place of hope and healing better than you found it as you pass it on to the next generation. The work is never finished. We are continually called to change, to innovate, and to improve patient care. So when I read this quote, again, I get the goosebumps, I still did. But this is a good reminder that my calling, my place in this nursing profession is a spot in time, and that I'm one part of a much greater impact that I'm trying to have on the world. And it's important to know that we can make impact of those people around us, but the great impact is how we show up together to provide patient care, but to make sure that those values that we provide at the bedside within our organization also continues and ripples into our everyday life. Nursing started out for me as a profession, but what I really found is that the values and the lessons learned and the way of life is actually a part of my everyday life, right? It doesn't just stop at the bedside. I don't walk out of the nursing unit and then stop being respectful to different people or show up in a different way. No, I want to embody those values no matter where I go. And I want to be a light to anyone who comes into my path. And I want to make sure that people know that I'm a safe space to come to when they have concerns or need help. So again, Sister Lauren, all of her wisdom, appreciate her. All right, let's talk a little bit more about me. Don't you all want to hear that? Let's talk more about Heidi, as I've been talking this whole presentation. But I think some of what I was talking about previously is directly relatable to my experience. And so I want to share a little bit about my journey with you so you kind of understand why I find this topic really meaningful. So I started at Mayo Clinic, July of 2015. And I, as a new graduate nurse, was putting my application into, let's put it this way, any floor that I think I could probably do okay in, right? So I had a lot of applications out there. And at the time, you could apply to any unit of interest at Mayo Clinic. And I got hired on a medical GI floor. I wasn't thrilled. I'm going to be completely honest. GI, not the glamour job that I was hoping to. However, I had a job, and I had a job at Mayo Clinic of all places. So gratitude, right? I was really grateful for that. And I had a really great friend and later colleague that encouraged me to pursue this opportunity. And so I came to Mayo Clinic July of 2015 to start on a medical GI floor. I had done my internship on a cardiac ICU floor in one of my hometown hospitals. And I was pretty dead set. I was going to spend some time on a medical surgical floor, and then I was going to move into the ICU, which many of us have that same pathway in mind. And what I learned working on the GI floor is that GI is a very complicated specialty, that I had a lot to learn as a new graduate nurse. And I learned that I needed to rely on other people more than I anticipated in those first couple of years. I also learned that it took more than a year to develop competency. I did not move to an ICU floor after 1 year like I expected. In fact, I still felt like a baby nurse after 1 year. It took many years of really getting the repetition, understanding the practice, getting confidence in my clinical skills, moving into leadership positions so that I could really feel like I was a competent nurse. The other thing that I found out is that that team on that GI floor was everything I needed but didn't know existed. They were some of the most competent, compassionate, well-rounded individuals that made me a better person and made me want to be a better nurse. They encouraged me. They got to know me personally. We threw baby showers, and we had Super Bowl parties, and we pulled pranks in the break room, and we had a lot of fun. Like I said, I went into nursing thinking this was going to be a professional career, but I didn't realize that you could have so much fun and enjoyment in what you do day in and day out. I truly felt more excited at work. Even if I was having a bad day, I was always happier at work, just because I got to spend time doing something I enjoyed, but I got to do it with a lot of friends. So I talk about getting to know your people. They are the ones who make the experience. And that's where I learned this lesson. GI became a passion of mine, right? I said I was not going to stay here long. GI became a passion of mine because other people found passion in it. So it was with that experience that I learned to love GI. I saw how impactful it was. I saw how complex GI was. And I saw how it was never just GI, right? We have a lot of subspecialized units here at Mayo Clinic. It's never the one specific specialty that you care for. Every patient has a brain, at least one kidney, a vasculature system, right? So you still have to learn and care for the whole individual. From there, I got to experience the Mayo Clinic magic, what I refer to as the Mayo Clinic magic. So there is this magic to Mayo Clinic, and this is all my perspective, but I have talked to many of us who've worked here who've had the same experience, that with time and surrounding yourself with the right people start to look at you a little differently, and they start to encourage you a little bit more, and they start to tap your shoulder. And what that is they are seeing a potential in you that you never knew existed. And this happened to me. I had a great mentor who was on the screen there. His name was Quinn Bissonette, and he was my nurse manager there. And he started to tap my shoulder figuratively and encouraged me to go on to higher education. He thought I had great leadership skills and that I had a greater purpose than what I had felt that I had working on the floor. I never wanted to leave this floor. I thought this was it. I was going to be a GI nurse the rest of my career. I didn't want to go to the ICU anymore. I didn't want to give up what I had within my team. But he wrote a lot of really complex things on the whiteboard one day. And next thing I knew, I was enrolled in a graduate program and I was going to obtain my master's. So I said, yep, I'm going to have that. I'll put it in my back pocket. Got my master's degree. And then again, I got some shoulder tapping. Next thing I knew, I was the nurse manager on another complex medical unit. It was a hospital internal medicine unit with a subset patient population of post-procedural patients. And I became a nurse manager there. And that was very unexpected, not within my, my career path and my original career path. But I wanted to take the risk because I felt safe and I felt that there was reward and risk. And so I did the same thing I did on the GI floor. I got to know my team. I got to know the patients. I spent time investing in those around me. I celebrated the wins. And that's a big deal because COVID hit pretty soon after starting in my management career. And so really celebrated the wins with those around me. But it was because of that risk that I learned a tremendous amount about myself, my values, and how I can be a better nurse and manager for those who are looking to me as that mentor. And here it is where I started to find that those values that I thought were only living out on my medical GI floor actually was something that I was living in everyday life. It didn't just stop when I left that really impactful floor. I took it into my management experience on the next unit. And from there, I found staff members and my coworkers embodied those same values. And then from that point, I found myself wanting to pursue a little bit more of a role that I could influence more of a career development aspect. And that's really where I found my passion and purpose. I think all these stepping stones, if you will, were building blocks to where I am today. And I couldn't be happier than I am in my role because I have a passion for helping individuals progress through their own career, finding excitement in the nursing profession, helping them take calculated risks, I'll say calculated risks, within their career pathway and getting to know different people and supporting patient care in more of an indirect way as a nursing placement coordinator. I have a lot to be thankful for, and Quinn Bissonnette on the screen is definitely one of the most impactful mentors I've ever had and truly has influenced many individuals in my life to go on to do greater things. Unfortunately, Quinn did unexpectedly lose his life during the pandemic, an unforeseen accident when cutting trees. And we lost Quinn, and that was really difficult. And it helped a lot of us come together and really relish the experiences that we have with individuals. And, I talk about making an impact. He was someone who had a tremendous impact on many nurses who are now nurse leaders across the enterprise. And I hope that someday I'll have the same impact that Quinn had on so many of us with others, whether or not they're working at Mayo Clinic or in the field of nursing. Like I said, I want to bring those values to my everyday life. And so that's my career goal as I move forward. So the nursing placement office, we talked a little bit about this in the beginning. The Office of Nursing Placement and Career Development is where Cheryl and I live now within our professional practice. We are a team of registered nurses who help support behind the scenes and serving as an extension to our nurse managers. Really, our main goal within this office is to identify nursing talent who align with that primary value, the needs of the patient come first. And so anyone who seeks opportunities at Mayo Clinic, that's the first thing we're going to try to glean from you is what are your values and how do they align with meeting our patients' needs first and foremost. All right, so that is the end of the presentation, as it will. Hopefully we have some questions that have popped up or comments in the chat that we can certainly circle back and try to help answer. Here on the screen, you'll see ways to stay connected with Mayo Clinic on our different social media sites. So if you're not already connected with us one way or the other, feel free. You can always join us in any of these platforms as well. All right. We'll look to Brittany, Cheryl, is there anything in the chat as of right now?
There
Um,
is,
oh, sorry, you go,
no, that's
Brittany.
okay, Cheryl, you can go.
Oh, I was just going to say there was a couple of questions along the way. Brittany nicely jumped into one. One one participant asked about how to get in touch with us, so I added all the emails to the nursing placement offices that we have.
Perfect. Thanks for doing that. If you do have questions or things you want us to maybe talk about or share a little bit more about, feel free to pop those in the chat as you're thinking of them. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So Heidi, there is a question that came in about what would you say stands out the most about the Mayo Preceptorship?
Yeah, so hopefully I understand that question as it was intended. But when I think of what stands out about Mayo Clinic preceptorship, so someone who is directly supported to helping you through your orientation, is that these tend to be volunteer opportunities. We try not to force anyone to a formal preceptorship if that's not something that they identify or find passion in. They also get additional training. So this is considered a leadership role. They do have formal training that they go through to be able to support our new orientees the best they can. It is an it's an added challenge to be able to provide nursing care, but also be able to mentor and guide someone along the way and help them navigate because there's so many different learning styles. And so part of this training is to help them navigate, of course, our own orientation model, but then how do you support different individuals with different learning styles through this process so they can be successful? So I would say that's probably what stands out most to us is that formal training. Cheryl, anything you would add?
No, I agree with everything that you said. Preceptors are very important as you start your journey at Mayo Clinic in any role. They are the ones that you'll even lean on in the future as you continue your journey. They're usually, somebody who the unit leadership has identified as future leaders on that unit and elsewhere within Mayo Clinic. Heidi, there is another question about somebody asking, could they have access to these slides later on to view?
Yeah, great question. Great question. All of these webinars are hopefully being recorded. I think they're supposed to be auto-recorded so that we can send out the recording to anyone who's registered for the series or for each individual webinar. So if you weren't able to attend the whole webinar or want to just review it, certainly you should be able to get the access to that webinar recording here soon. I think it's emailed out to you.
And then Simmerpreet Kaur mentioned that they are from England, and would there be virtual work experience opportunity?
I should clarify, registered nurse working experience virtually. You would have to look individually at each site and region. I would say because opportunities ebb and flow, we do sometimes get remote opportunities depending on the site and location, but they are infrequent, at least in Rochester.
Correct.
We don't have too many that come about. And most of the time, if we do have a remote opportunity, they are competitive and they look for some experience. So take that into consideration. But certainly if you're seeking out opportunities, you want to just know a little bit more, you can reach out to any of those placement inboxes and see if we can get you a little bit more information specific to that site or region.
That participant just added, I am a 17-year-old student.
Awesome.
So required to gain a lot of experience.
Yeah. So it'll be a little bit harder for remote experience being over in England. Cheryl, do you know of any other opportunities off the top of your head?
I do not. I know that any here in Arizona require many years as an experienced RN. And again, as you mentioned, Heidi, those experiences come about very far,
Yeah.
in between.
Okay. Yeah, but certainly reach out if you have an
Mm-hmm.
interest and want to inquire with us.
Mm-hmm.
Do not hesitate to reach out to one of those inboxes, and if we can help, we certainly will.
Yes. And then somebody is asking if we could send out our email addresses. And, I'm happy to put our emails in there if that would be helpful.
Yeah, you can certainly link mine in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Next question is there also any entry level jobs for people who are studying right now to get into a nursing program?
Yeah. Yeah, we actually have a lot of I would say I'm going to call them unlicensed care roles, right? We have a lot of different roles that you don't need to be licensed to move in and work and support Mayo Clinic, and specific to the Department of Nursing, but even outside of the Department of Nursing, depending on what you're looking for. If you're in a program as a student, there are certain roles that may be a little more flexible in terms of scheduling that you might want to pursue. So depending on where you're located, and if there is a closer site region, reach out to that placement inbox and send your inquiry and see if we can connect with you and guide you to some of those opportunities that you can be working in, and to build a relationship with Mayo Clinic now versus waiting until you're licensed. Yeah, definitely inquire.
Absolutely. Does Mayo Clinic have any internships for prospective nursing students?
Yeah, Cheryl, you want to jump in? Share about our.
Sure. Yes. So I can speak specifically about Arizona. We offer, it's more of like an externship, and I do know it's unpaid. We're actually, we actually just had that application open, and we're in the process of interviewing people now for that position. I believe, is, I don't remember, my colleague handles this, so I apologize. I don't know the exact amount of time, but it is quite lengthy. And you would be working probably 2 to 3 shifts per week with a preceptor on a unit, and it gives you wonderful experience as you're in the process of almost getting to the completion of a nursing program.
Yeah. Thanks, Cheryl. Yeah. Rochester has something similar, slightly different. We do have a 10-week paid internship every summer. And to qualify, you have to have completed your junior year of a baccalaureate program to be considered. And that application window opens typically what I think of right after Thanksgiving. But usually it goes live about December 1st and it closes down, I think through January. Is that right, Cheryl? Does it go through January? The application window is slightly different. It might be slightly.
Yeah, it might be different because we just opened ours, or
Yeah.
for just a couple of weeks, it just closed. So, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Rochester it's open for usually 6 to 8 weeks, starting in the beginning of December, and then it'll close down. We review applications, and usually those offers go out early February, actually. And that is for a 10-week internship program that starts late May, early June, and goes for 10 weeks. So there is information on our career site about internship programs. So definitely, if you're looking about application windows, when you qualify, some more of those specific details, review our careers webpage, and I'll kind of lean you into the right direction in terms of internship programs across the sites and regions.
And that's a nice segue into the next question, which is, how long does it usually take to get accepted into the nursing residency program?
Yeah, how long does it take? It depends, and that's a non-answer. I totally understand that, but it truly depends on when you're applying, right? How many positions are available? Each site does it slightly different. Rochester current state is an always open rolling nurse residency posting, which you can apply anytime you qualify. I typically say make sure you're applying in your final semester. Don't try to apply too far out, just because we might not know what positions are available, how many nurse residents we can hire, but also your experience. You need to build upon your experience. So if you even haven't even had a capstone, well, all you're doing is making yourself maybe a less stronger applicant because you haven't gone through that capstone. So make sure you put your best self forward when you're ready to apply. So your final semester is ideal when you're applying. And I would say anywhere between a couple weeks to a month or so, you should hear back. If you are someone who has applied and hasn't heard back, do reach out, send us a note. We try to be honest in getting to every single individual, whether or not that means we have to extend the time frame in which we can move you forward, or if we have made a decision, we want to make sure that you receive any update regarding your application.
I just popped a link to the nurse residency site, and it does address different things across all locations, Rochester, Arizona, and Jacksonville. So please go on there. I know in Arizona, it is not a rolling application. There are specific times during the year that we open up the nurse residency, but as Heidi mentioned, each cohort does have a certain number of positions, and it is a very, very competitive process. But I did put a link in there that you could seek out more information.
Thanks, Cheryl. That's really helpful.
Great. Okay, let's see. Somebody asked, also, is Mayo Clinic in all states or only specific states?
Yeah, only specific states. It's not in all states, unfortunately. Would that be great? It's Mayo Clinic has presence primarily within Arizona, Florida, and Minnesota. We also have some health system sites that are, of course, in the southern region of Minnesota. We have some presence in Iowa and into Wisconsin.
Okay, next question. We still have time. This participant stated, when I was applying, it asked what facility I could join. And I just picked the state I live in, which is Indianapolis, Indiana. I was wondering, is there a Mayo Clinic there? Which unfortunately there is not. Also, I'm a pre-nursing student and applied for a nursing management position because that's the only nursing position I see posted. Will that get me to another position even if I applied?
Yeah, so happy to help offline if you're running into issues with the careers webpage. When it's asking for location, it's a location of Mayo Clinic in which you want to work in. So if you want to work at the Rochester campus, you want to select Minnesota or Rochester, Minnesota, or any of the other health system sites that you might want to be a part of. So it's not asking for where you are, it's asking for where you want to work, essentially, at that Mayo Clinic site.
Right.
And then from there, you can filter by, Department of Nursing role, unlicensed, licensed roles, things like that. So we can always navigate that space too. Sometimes it's intuitive and other times not, depending on what you're looking for. Each organization or healthcare organization, they might be a different name for the same role, if that makes sense. You might not even know what to be looking for at this point in time, because Mayo Clinic has a name for one unlicensed care role versus like Cleveland Clinic or,
right,
things like that.
Okay. Next question is there any incentive or paths available for Mayo Clinic employees to further education through Mayo Clinic's university?
Okay. So we do have a School of Health Sciences through Mayo Clinic. So that's one thing. We do have a school, but depending on the program, we may or not support that through our health sciences school here. So you have to make sure that depending on which pathway you're taking, you also then have to vet it through the Mayo Clinic Health Sciences School. So do know that it doesn't have everything. For example, we don't have a nursing school here at Mayo Clinic, but we do have a program that supports furthering your education. We actually have two different programs. We'll talk about each of them separately, the conditions of employment, but also a career investment program. So let's talk about conditions of employment first. And so some roles in which you're hired into do require either a certification or a degree obtained within a certain amount of time that you agree to. When you take that position, you agree that I will obtain, let's say, for example, you're hired to Mayo Clinic, Rochester, with an associate degree of nursing. Mayo Clinic requires a bachelor's degree within 5 years of starting your employment here. So this is considered a condition of employment. So I am saying that, yes, I know and I understand that within 5 years at Mayo Clinic, I will obtain my bachelor's degree. Mayo Clinic supports tuition for you to obtain your bachelor's degree since we require it of you. You do have to go through one of our affiliated programs. So there are some parameters to which program you can enroll in, but that's something that we help you navigate upon starting here. Great program if you're already planning on obtaining your bachelor's degree, have your associate's degree, and want to get started working. The other program, our career investment program, is a program that's a tuition support program that helps you obtain a higher degree or certification that is not required for your current role that you want to seek out because you want to further your education and move on, or just for your own professional growth, I should say. In order to qualify for this program, you have to have worked at Mayo Clinic for at least 1 year, be in good standing, and be in a benefited position. Okay, so there are some qualifications to this program, but then there are pathways. So Mayo Clinic has strategic pathways that you can choose from to further your career. There's only a certain number of spots that we allow per quarter, and other times there are unlimited spots that you can apply to. You also have to get accepted into the program with the academic institution that you're hoping to be a part of. So this is twofold. You have to get accepted into the career investment program here at Mayo Clinic, meeting those qualifications, and then also apply to the academic program. These programs are also affiliated with Mayo Clinic, so there are certain schools that we look for you to obtain your degree through. And then the goal is that Mayo Clinic will help you with some degree obtainment. You commit at least 2 years back to Mayo Clinic, preferably in the pathway in which you obtain your advanced degree or certification. Did I miss anything, Cheryl?
Oh, no, that was very thorough.
Okay.
Very thorough. Next question is about, are you going to get one preceptor all through your residency program?
Yeah. Great question. This comes up quite often for me. And what I like to distinguish is nurse residency is separate from your clinical orientation. Other places, if you go outside of Mayo Clinic and you're shopping around and you're looking at different organizations with residency programs, you might get hired to one residency pool in which they move you around unit to unit to unit, and you might have different preceptors and they'll just place you at the end. That is not how it functions here. And so your clinical orientation, when we talk about you side by side another preceptor, is for a shortened amount of time when you're on the unit and you're going through our orientation model. There, we try to keep your preceptor as consistent as possible. So there's assigned one primary preceptor, but I would be ignorant if I didn't say that you likely will have one or two secondary preceptors that will jump in and fill in for things like time off requests, absent calls, maybe they get pulled to a lead position. So there will be times where you get exposure to other preceptors, but you will have one consistent thread, hopefully throughout, unless, there's a very unique circumstance.
Wholeheartedly agree with that 100%. There is a question here or a statement. So I'm not sure if I'm reading this correctly. So I apologize to Raju. I think it's asking about recruitment overseas. I'm not sure. It just says recruitment overseas. Well, I think, will we conduct recruitment overseas, if I'm reading the question correctly?
Sure. for some of our international hires and what that may look like at this point in time. For those, some of those are case by case situations. So I always say, if you're applying to a certain position, read the job description. Likely it'll tell you
Right.
if sponsorship is available for that specific
Correct.
position. So if you have one specific position in mind, read the job posting in its entirety so that you understand whether or not qualify, if that's a limitation for yourself. If you have further questions or it's a very broad question, again, you can reach out to our placement inbox and we can share that with you as well.
And I'm skipping one question, but I just thought this would be a good segue for a couple of questions in the queue. Can a nurse without work authorization work at Mayo Clinic? And then there is a new grad from, I believe, India, asking how to get admitted into our hospital for work. So I thought that would be a good segue into these two questions.
Yeah. Little bit trickier just because there are some individual situations with the work authorization question. Again, when you're applying to a position, we do have some questions that will kind of lean you in one direction or the other. So feel free to apply and go through that process just to learn a little bit about. We have some information within the job descriptions that also might answer the question. Anything else that you would recommend, Cheryl, for individuals in that specific situation?
No, I totally agree. Again, during the application process, as Heidi mentioned, there are specific questions surrounding work authorization. And depending on how you answer it, it's almost like a tiered response. And again, our placement mailboxes could potentially help with some of those questions.
Yeah, and same is true with any international RN seeking employment at Mayo Clinic. If you haven't graduated from an accredited program or have work authorization in the United States, it'll kind of talk through that component as well. I know that is a heavy topic and can get confusing pretty quick. And so that's why I always caution to say, just send us an email. We can review your unique situation and give you some insight if you feel like maybe you're not fitting into that exact box that the response is trying to guide you one way or the other. If it's still confusing to you, just reach out because it'll say about those, you must have graduated from an accredited program, and if not, you must have had some applicable RN experience into the work environment. But then you also typically have to have some sort of work authorization, whether that be sponsorship or not. Yeah. So they talk through that in each job posting and description.
Correct. And I will say that any overseas educated RN will have to provide a work through like one of the companies like True Merit and an educational equivalency that is required at Mayo Clinic.
Good point.
There are a couple of raised hands. I'm not sure if I'm not sure about how we're handling that, Heidi. I'm going to go to the next question. Oh, that was one about, sorry, what are the biggest tips you have for new grads who want to join Mayo Clinic? And we have 2 minutes left.
Oh, okay, I gotta be brief. Yeah, I would say make sure that, well, new grad looking to make sure when you apply, you're very thorough, very professional, and you show your authentic self. Don't forget to review your resume. Make sure your cover letter highlights things that I can't glean from your actual resume, right? The cover letter should be additional things that I want to know about you that makes me say, like, I want this candidate because of this experience or whatever it may be that isn't highlighted so much on the resume. Another thing for you to do is attend the next webinar because they're going to talk about being or showing up as your authentic self when it comes to applying and standing out from the rest of the applicant group. So attend that webinar. That's what that whole presentation should be about, and give you some really great tips and tricks. Yeah.
So Heidi, there's quite a few questions that we did not get to. I don't know if we send out like an FAQ, or I just don't know how the questions get answered.
Yep. Yeah. So we're at the top of the hour, so we want to be mindful of everyone's time. So we will transition. If you have a question that hasn't been answered today, feel free to reach out one of those placement inboxes, and we're happy to get you those answers. If there's any common themes that I'm seeing, we could always send out an email with the recorded webinar as well, if there's some high hitting topics that I feel like it's pertinent to address. But we'll review the remaining questions and address them accordingly.
Yep.
So we're at the top of the hour. I want to make sure that I thank all of you for attending. Hopefully this was insightful, beneficial. If you got some pearls to take away, I'm happy with that. There are going to be subsequent webinars the next 3 Tuesdays this month, and I think one's into March even, which is wild to me. It's almost going to be March by the end of this webinar series, but tune into those. Otherwise, if you do have anything, please do not hesitate to reach out. And have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.